Hey everyone, my name is Hetty Jones and welcome to this episode of Tech Uncensored. And today we're going to be talking about the art and science of building successful teams. So we know that a critical milestone in scaling a startup for growth involves building these high performing teams that are also well rounded. And this could make or break a venture's success. So there is this guiding hypothesis that we tend to gravitate towards people with similar interests and values. And that is the very foundation that we need to build at the early stages of a company to move the company in the right direction. So we tackled this topic a few times in the past, episode 17, how to build the right team, and also episode 15, finding the right technical co-founder. So both episodes actually touched on the complexity of actually finding the right fit, what involves not only considering people's strengths, their complementary skills, but also their cultural fit and team dynamics. So you would think that gut-led instinct, human experience are going to guide the direction to which you will find the perfect fit for those that you decide to bring into your company. But these days, we also know that data is providing a greater role in helping companies do this. Today, we're going to explore an alternative, and one approach is that one approach that has gained traction in recent years is a structured assessment tool such as the Gallup Strength Finder. And this helps identify the strengths and guides, sorry, that's the strengths of individuals and guides the team formation. So their objective is to bring insights to the founder to guide a team member's natural talents and tendencies to enable a lot of organizations to build their teams with complementary strengths, but also minimize some of these potential gaps and redundancies. So, a few stats that validate why building the team is so critical to success. CB Insights reported that team composition and lack of complementary skills are among the top 20 reasons for startup failure. Kauffman Foundation also indicated that startups with a balanced team of technical and business expertise are 30% more likely to succeed. And finally, research by Gallup indicated that teams with complementary strengths that focus on individual strength development can actually achieve 72% higher engagement and 29% higher profitability. So today, I am so pleased to invite Ernesto Guillermo Leal to speak with me on this topic. Ernesto is an industrial engineer with entrepreneurial experience in consumer products. And he's worked for companies such as Procter& and Gamble, as well as Telefonica. And for the last 10 years, he's been a consultant in helping companies accelerate the pace of innovation. So today, Ernesto has agreed to join me to discuss the importance of these types of methodologies like the Gallup Strength Finder to discover talents within the teams and also build more effective human capital. So welcome, Ernesto.
Thank you for having me, Hesi. A privilege and an honor. So,
Good.
just as background, I arrived to this tool out of desperation. Out of how do I get to the next level? And a mentor told me you need to understand your strength. You don't need to clone yourself into your boss. And then I found the methodology of Gallup, and wonderful things happened. The first thing, he gave me a platform for a common language. What am I good at? Many people, you ask them, what are your talents? And people look at you in disbeliefs. And Peter Drucker, the master, had written an article, seminar article called Managing Oneself, in which he stated that most people don't know what their talents are. And then I was given the opportunity to lead a team, and I led the team. And at the beginning, I have them take the test, and again, we produce wonderful results. So I would say I'm an advocate, and I would recommend it for startups as a tool to basically find the unique talents of persons and then help them match the needs of the assignment to what needs to be done to the talents and experience of the person. So hopefully we'll have a conversation to this end. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. The one thing I do remember, I used to work in banking, and we actually had an offsite for 3 days where we went through a whole Myers-Briggs exercise to understand what our MBTI score was and how that compared and contrasted to people in our team. And then the next exercise the next day was understanding how ENFGs and ISTJs actually fit. At the end of the day, understanding who you are through those self-assessments and understanding who your teammates are, that is what we're trying to get to, right? Is really understanding who is this individual and what's the most likely fit that individual has, or dynamics that individual has with other people in the team that represent other different or disparate personality traits. Do you agree?
Agree 100%. And you took me down again memory lane. I also did the 3-day seminar for the Myers-Briggs indicator. There's no one methodology that is a silver bullet. You highlighted the two key elements. First, know thyself. What am I good at? And again, what are my, I would say, natural God-given talents? And once I know them, how do I make a contribution in order to develop them into strength? And how do you know when they're strength? Well, I usually use the research that claims, 10,000, that famous 10,000 hour rule, that, the equivalent of a PhD, 8 hours a day during 4 years, 9,600. And then you know that you're very good at. And again, it's a platform for other people to know and to find how to connect and communicate with you. And when we can get more into details as we delve into the conversation.
Okay, so let's because we're talking about the importance of team dynamics and finding the right people in building your team, especially from a startup perspective. Let's look at this from their point of view. You are a young startup, and you can't afford to find the right co-founder right now. You started this from scratch. And so, especially when it comes to technology, finding a technical co-founder is really hard. Partly because it's not necessarily their idea, but they have the right skill sets that you need. And so more often than not, you end up outsourcing the talent. And so what happens is that earlier on, you actually build maybe a great MVP, but then as you start to iterate and scale, this poses problems because that outsourced individual is not a member of your team. So from your perspective, how does that fit at the early stages when we're talking about these types of tools in determining how and when to find that co-founder?
That's a great question, Hesi. There's two sides to it, and I will say it depends. The first side is you as an entrepreneur knowing yourself, and what you're good at. And rightly so, in the example that you're pointing out, early in the startup, I delegate or outsource some of the things that need to be done. I like to point out the example of Warby Parker, 4 kids doing an MBA and trying to find a way to generate revenues, and all of them are doing this part-time. And they realize, it's kind of serendipitous, that all of them wear glasses. Hey man, how expensive glasses are, blah blah, and so on. So they figure, well, let's really do the homework, and they really dug deep and understood that it was basically a monopoly. And hey man, let's cut the middleman, etc., etc. From the very beginning, they delegated, I would say, all technical aspects and manufacturing to their Chinese supplier, and they focused on design and actually lowering price. So back to this, the second element is, well, yes, the person needs to know their talents, but as you build a relationship with the outsource, and thinking again of a startup that you outsource, let's say, the coding to somebody else. I recommend running the test very early to know if the person is, very similar to me or has complementary talents. Because what's going to happen very quickly as you do a couple of iterations of your MVPs or the trying to get to the next stage, or the next gate, that you're going to find out one or two things. We are very similar. We are very tech driven, blah, 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 introverts, and nobody can sell. And then during the next stage, once we have the MVP, we need to go out and sell and fight consumers. Or we're so different that, it's a good match, but our communication is not ideal. So I recommend it to do it in the early stages. But in the corporation, again, mind you that while I'm an entrepreneur, I came from many, many years of the corporate world. And when I was well into my 10th year of tenure within the company when I discovered this tool, and I took it as a startup. So you can do it in a corporation in any stage if you want to, again, up your game, because you're going to give your team tools to understand themselves and make the team more effective. But in the case of startups, I recommend it to do it as soon as they become familiar with the tool.
Okay. I want to kind of use your expertise in marketing to address this, because you also worked in consumer packaged goods. And there was an example that was cited by, this is more of a case study around Pepsi and the idea that because of the lack of diversity within the team, something did not get executed properly. So back in 2017, Pepsi released this commercial featuring Kendall Jenner. And back then, if you remember, Black Lives Matter had a huge presence within the media stream. And so it depicted Kendall Jenner joining a protest, and she handed Pepsi to an officer to convey this message of unity and peace. So the ad actually faced enormous criticism, backlash for being tone deaf and co-opting protest movements like Black Lives Matter in a way that was insensitive to sell their soda. So Pepsi quickly pulled back the ad, saying that they missed the mark and they shouldn't have done it that way. So the point of this is that, as you know, when you're developing ad campaigns, it goes through enormous approval levels. Like I'd say almost 50, 60 rounds of approval until you get the message right. At the end of the day, it was wrong. And there was widespread criticism that it was ill-conceived and that there lacked this diversity within the team to actually develop an ad that the public really cared about. So my question to you, as someone who's worked in this space and somebody who's probably seen these types of mistakes, tell me about diversity in thought, in representation, when it comes to making decisions, and why does something like this happen even at the most, I would say, advanced organizations that seem to have built the right teams?
Yes, thank you. And lovely question, because what happens with time is that corporations, they might recruit for diversity of all types. I like to say diversity of thinking, and diversity of all representation. But with time, because of cultures that are very strong, and I would argue most Fortune 500 companies have very strong cultures and very strong ethics for hiring, training, etc. But if it gets to the point where they stop, I would say, they stop listening to the outside and start listening to themselves. So it is in hindsight, you can look at that as a great example of the consumer didn't have a seat on the table, and rightfully so. You say, and you with your experience and mine, you go through 60 iterations. Interestingly, the corporation I had the fortune to work for, that was Procter & Gamble, had a mantra, which is consumer is the boss, and we many times had a real physical cutout of three ladies, Maria, Rosa, and Hortensia, three flowers, and we had a cutout real life. So every time we sat down in the meeting, we will put them there to say what would she think, and the ideas didn't go out unless we had a real feedback from people, and understood the pain point. So it's not surprising, and it's not the last time that is going to happen. It's going to continue to happen, and especially in large corporations. And again, let it be a learning for startups. Consumer is the boss. Are you really excited by the idea, or is the idea solving a real problem for real consumers? Because some of the things that I always, you and me are in the tech space and try to mentor these people, and they are enamored with an idea, which it might be a great idea, but doesn't have a true consumer solution. It's not addressing a real problem, and it's hard when we need to do it. Sometimes we just not necessarily burst their bubble, but point them in the direction of addressing. And again, I love the question, because it's so hard for us to put the magnifying glass on ourselves. Are we considering all thinking and avenues to validate that this is a really good idea and product for who matters most, which is the consumer? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think that because, like you said, the consumer doesn't have a seat at the table, it's incumbent upon founders to ensure that there's advocacy in the room for the people that will end up making you money, right? Making the product work. So
I agree, and they will. Let me add one more. They will be willing and able to pay a premium if you're solving a pain that nobody has addressed the way you're addressing it.
mhm. Yes, and I think at the end of the day, everybody realizes that, hey, I didn't just fall in love with my solution, thinking that there was a potential solution for my problem. So I'm actually developing a solution that people want, right? And so by ensuring that you do have that diversity of thought, then you're growing your company the right way, and you're making sure that you've done all the right things to develop that product market fit. So thank you for that. So I'm gonna talk about the difference between human judgment and something like a Gallup strength finder. When we're talking about team fit, I'm still having a hard time figuring out whether or not something like this is going to really overturn a decision that I'm going to make at the end of the day. Why do you like these types of tools?
Thank you. So basically, historically, what are the criteria? You have chemistry. Is it the right fit? Is this person the right fit for the culture and for the problem that I'm trying to solve? And then there is chemistry. So that's like three. So at the end of the day, is personal judgment. And this is not the only tool. I'm an advocate, but as you say, there's Myers-Briggs, adds I would say a numbers component, data component that help us guide in addition of having a language. I'm not saying you're gonna adopt this as the only tool. You're gonna use it to complement with a metric, that gives you understanding of, oh wow, this person is a listener, this person is, like me, and ideation. He's a a connector of people, and I'm gonna have him in sales, or I'm gonna have him, reach to key stakeholders. Well, he's had experience and he has the talent and the passion for that. It makes it easier. So I'm an advocate because of that. It provides, to answer your question, some numbers, a metric that can help us guide, and a language that can help guide the decision, in addition to the things that we talked about, the human judgment, the chemistry, the fit with the culture, and the expertise for what job needs to be done.
Okay, so let's get into like I said, the nitty gritty of the tool itself. So how does it actually identify and categorize some of these individual strengths? How reliable is it? to when we actually validate it against other tools out there?
How do you validate it? Let me first go back
Well,
and a
first,
little bit.
yeah. So first, how does it categorize? How does it categorize some of these individuals' strengths and weaknesses, like in a way that allows us to assess, um, team dynamics, or even how it relates to how we make decisions within teams.
Right. So for people that doesn't have background on this tool, the Gallup have been doing this since the 1950s or something like that. And it's gained popularity again because there's not many tools like this to provide insights as to what are your specific talents. So you take an online test, and then it has 34 guiding talents, and those 34 guiding talents are kind of arranged into four buckets. Power of execution, power of relationship, power of minds. It's like four leadership styles, and the data, and rightfully you highlighted at the beginning of this interview that the data says that the more diverse the thinking of the team, the better the results. It is because they have this map of the 34 talents, and I personally have used it, like I said, many times, but in a couple of organizations where the talents were either skewed towards one side. You have a lot of strategic thinkers, but you don't have a lot of people with executing or relationship building, and it takes a variety of talents, and we were able to actually take action to recruit and hire people that had those complementary talents. So does that answer your question? That's the way
Yeah,
they are grouped.
I think so. If you provide an example, let's say what successful teams have effectively like leveraged the insights that you find in, let's say, Strengths Finder or other tools to complement each other's strengths. What examples would you come up with?
Oh, I have a good example. It's very well documented, and people can actually look it up online. I was positively impressed when I read Ray Dalio's book Principles. That in one of his chapters, he, as part of the body of tests they do, once a person has been accepted, is they have people take all these psychometric tests, including the Gallup strengths. And what they do is they create something like a collectible baseball cards or soccer cards. In the front, you have the person name and picture, but in the back, it has the different psychometric tests. They have the Gallup strengths, the top 5 strengths. They have the Myers-Briggs, and they also have the projects and work experience that the person has, and Ray Dalio claims that has been game changing for them because once when they're engaging in a new client or they're about to tackle a new challenge, the leader can actually pick and choose, from the battery of talents, diverse talents they have in their organization, and craft this, superior high performance teams. So that's an example, I think, for me, highlights and underscores the importance of understanding people's talent and the use in particular of the Gallup Strength Finder as a tool for assembling high performance teams.
Okay, so I want to be a little bit of a devil's advocate here in determining whether or not these tools are effective, especially when it comes to, and I've highlighted this, like the oversimplification of human traits. So we have personalities, we have strengths, we can categorize them into a bucket, but there are nuances in all of this, right? When it comes to human behavior, when it comes to potential, when it comes to, when it comes to everyday situations among people. Can these tools adequately respond to things when it comes to chemistry or relationships over the course of, let's say, a tenure between, let's say, two people within a company?
I love that question, and again, it's a complex answer because we have, like you said, each human is unique. Okay, we have challenges, we have our personal experience, But it's up to the leader, okay, to understand each individual and try to get the best out of them. Emotional intelligence. And I'm glad you included the tenure, okay. And let's take again, our audience hopefully are mostly startups. So you start as a founder, you use this tool and you find a right match in a co-founder or co-founders, and then we start the tenure. And again, the cycles, they're very rapid cycles to get to the next gate in a startup. You're in ideation, you're in prototyping, there's product development, and then you basically go to market and you start fixing things. And interestingly, each one of the founders have to grow in their roles. Some of them will not grow. Some of them will stay behind, and only those who have the stamina, emotional intelligence, and all those traits that you signaled before will reach the top, because not everybody will go on that journey. So is the Gallup strength a predictor of that, or are the other tools? I would say no, because like you said, people are complex. But again, at the beginning, it provides a foundation for the individual and the organization to best match those talents, passions, and skills to the jobs that needs to be done. And people will develop their talents into strength given the appropriate exposure. Those that have I would say faster learning cycles will capitalize and really learn from them, and will help the corporation take the business to new heights. And others will stay in position or will leave the organization. The organizations are also living organisms, and people will come in and come out. But it's okay. It's part of the life cycle of a startup and a business.
So, from your perspective, and it seems like it's a good basis to develop that foundation over time. But you're saying human judgment needs to be like still like the majority of how we make decisions about people. Over time, let's just assume that AI is going to take over the world, which it probably will at some point in time. And everybody's going to be looking for faster ways to try to minimize risk to the organization. So if I know that, let's say there's a performance gap, or I can sense based on somebody's behavior, which we're now getting into privacy, which really freaks me out. But let's just say that based on somebody's behavior, they seem less engaged, or based on our interactions, they're not responding properly to me in a way that I think that you know they seem kind of bored in their job, or they're not as happy. So from the perspective of data, all of these things can get captured eventually, even outside of what this Gallup Strength Finder tool is right now. And let's assume it does evolve into that. How important is that to an organization um, that has now the ability to kind of nip these things in the bud before they end up spiraling out of control? From a data
Uh,
perspective, from a data perspective, I think it's important. From a founder perspective, I would assume that they find value in it. But I want your opinion on how, let's say, the next 10 years could be, especially with these types of tools and data being collected everywhere.
Thank you for the perspective. Wow, it's a great question, because there's the side of the scare. Oh my God, AI is gonna you know take all over the world. And then I am my personal opinion is that they're just tools to make us more productive. I love the analogy of Steve Jobs. When the first Apple came out. A human can run, can walk, and then gets on a bicycle. The technology is the bicycle that enables you to get farther and faster to other places. He made the same thing analogy with the computer. So AI is just a tool. As we start using and collecting more data to the point where all of these psychographic and psychometric tests are going to be loaded, and you can actually predict what with certain certainty, persons that are going to be a good match for the role, you can always, in my opinion, have to have the human touch and the human essence. You can learn so many things right now nowadays with the YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. Basically you can have a university at your disposal. But I like to call on the anecdotes of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. The only way we know Socrates is because Plato wrote about Socrates. And mind you that when the time that Socrates was alive, writing was a new technology, and he despised it. He says it doesn't allow me to do the Socratic method of question and answer. Question and answer to help you find the solution. So he despised that technology, and then he taught Plato. Plato told Aristoteles, and Aristoteles was the professor of Alexander the Great, no less. And there's many experiences. So it gets to the point that my professor is, an AI and YouTube and videos, etc. But you need that personal feedback, engagement, emotional intelligence that up to now in the next 10 years, I don't think we're gonna reach it. You need also that human touch. Data is great, as a predictive tool, and that can help you do many things. But at the end of the day, we're designing product services for human beings, to improve their lives, to touch their lives. So that's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
So you have also we know that these personalities, these traits that individuals have, they're not static. They evolve over time. Even individuals learn from their own misbehaviors. Um, but you also believe that it can help you as an individual develop your strengths. So can you give the example? I know you had told me earlier about Michael Jordan. Can you explain how he has used it to his benefit?
Yes, certainly. It's an example that usually for these types of tools, the analogies of sports, because again they have a lot of data, etc. So Michael Jordan, he was I would say an average player when he was in high school, and it's a legend that he was cut out from the team. So he went exercise and developed his talents as a basketball player, and oh my God, during his tenure he was the GOAT, the greatest of all time, during his time. But then he decides, for whatever personal reasons, he's going to go into baseball. Well, it turns out, the muscles that you need for baseball are completely different. And he was placed in a double A team for other reasons, blah, blah, and so on. He wasn't as effective. Had he stayed there for the number of, had dedicated the hours, he might have developed. But his natural talents were first in basketball, and second, he had spent so many the 10,000 hour rules, so many cycles that he was a master at his craft. But the same happens with individuals. So you are who you are, okay, in essence, and you learn tools. So, but the essence, with the beauty of this tool, it gives you the essence of who you are. You know what? I'm an extroverted. I'm an ideation, and this is the way you produce results. The key here is you have now a tool to tell you the most effective and efficient way in which you produce results. Now extrapolate that to a team. If you know each person's natural talents and strengths and how more effective and efficiently they produce results, as a leader, you're better able to assemble a team. Dover highlight high performance team, because in the beginning of the project you have a guy like me, and Ernesto with the ideation, and then the energy to engage key stakeholders. But then we'll go to the phase of execution, and maybe you have a master executing. So you're passing the baton from stage to stage to the person that can really deliver outstanding results. And that is the beauty of this tool, and the analogy of Michael Jordan, because you have a real life example of somebody who had tremendous talents in one area and then strength, and then went to another area with I would say, very little level of expertise, and was doing very good. They just decided to come back to. He tested it. He said, "You know what? My strengths are in this area. Let me go back."
That's actually a good idea. It's almost validating who you are and not necessarily the person you want to be. Because I think sometimes when you decide, hey, I want to go in a different direction and you just don't have the chops for it and you can't make money out of doing that new role, you end up defaulting back into the person and the skill sets that you already have. And I think it's a big I guess it's for me or for anybody that thinks they can do so much and then they realize that they can't. Then it's a realization that maybe these tools will give me exactly what I need in order to make it better for myself, make it better for the team, and you're right. It's something that, hey, I have to live with. These are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, and I can play within the sandbox. I can have motivations to do better, but understand that in order for me to perform, these are the things that I should rely on.
Totally, totally. You mentioned something else that is struck a chord, which is especially when you are being pressed for time or
Right.
you're stressed, you tend to revert back to the way you naturally operate, and knowing that that is the way you operate, it is liberating. Hey, I know that when I'm stressed, I'm going to generate ideas to get out of the jam. I'm going to connect with someone to help me do this. I'm going to communicate it in the written, and then I'm going to make a prototype, and then I'm going to ask for feedback. Everyone has a different way to activate.
Yes, no, I agree. So I want you to give me some closing thoughts in terms of what does this balance look like between tools and human judgment? And when should stuff like this be useful for organizations?
Yeah. So first, again, I'm gonna there's two sides. The first side, our audience is our tech startups. So I believe there's an underutilization in startups of these tools that have value. They're relying basically on human judgment. Is there chemistry? Is there fit? Do they have the technical skills to solve the problem? Giving and using these tools, whatever they are, again, I highly recommend the Gallup Strength Finder tool as a way to open the communication and understand and enhance the recruiting process. So that's one side. And in large organizations, they've been using several tools for many, many years. I was fortunate enough to work in organizations that had the tools or allow them to allow you to, if you found a tool that you think it was helpful, to make yourself and your team more effective and efficient. There's a myriad of tests there, but I highly recommend it to startups because, again, just to give them more data in order to make better decisions in assembling their teams successfully.
Okay. I think you wrapped it up really nicely. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Ernesto,
Nancy.
for joining me today. So I appreciate your time. I actually had a great conclusion, but you understand the value of human judgment, and we're not going to displace humans anytime soon. So I think that from that perspective, we need human context, human experience, human understanding, in order to actually make things better for us at the end of the day. So thank you.
Thank you.
So for our audience, thank you for joining us today. Tech Uncensored is powered and produced by Altitude Accelerator and is hosted on Spotify. My name is Hessie Jones. And until next time, have fun and stay safe.